not wearing that dress anymore. It's gender normative and ass ugly.
Ugh. What is this? You know something is bad when it's making the Powerpuff Girls 2016 reboot actually look good.
OMG! Yes!
I know our current timeline may not seem like the best in places, but I'm so grateful we exist in this one, and not the one where this show would have actually gotten the green light. For those unaware, back in 2021, CW began production on what was going to be a live-action show of the Powerpuff Girls. You remember the Powerpuff Girls, that beloved animated classic which featured 3 young girls with supernatural powers kicking the ever-loving crap out of bad guys. Well, CW wanted to make an edgy adult version of that, because apparently having a small child kick the blood and teeth out of a cross-dressing lobster devil guy wasn't quite edgy enough. There was actually a script leak of this a while back, and most people thought it was fake because of just how bad it was. And no one thought a company full of high-functioning adults would ever conceive such an idea into such squelch, let alone invest the time and money into making it. Oh, but how my expectations continue to be overinvested in our society.
I expect nothing, and I'm still let down.
As now we actually have some leaked trailer footage of what this show could have been, and my sweet brother in Christ, it is somehow so much worse than that script would have ever had you believe.
But in like an angry, kinky hate boner kind of way.
That's the best kind of boner.
Wow, that was the worst piece of crap I've ever seen.
Oh, and apparently CW and Warner Brothers are trying to bleach this trailer from existence, with copyright strikes and takedowns coming left, right and centre, showing that even they must be unequivocally ashamed of their past mistake. So I don't know how much I'm going to be able to show without getting hit by this, but let's take a look at it anyway. It's also worth noting that the trailer itself is not actually official and was instead thrown together by a third party, but all the clips that you see within the trailer, they are legit. So first up, we see Professor Utonium in his lab, being played by Donald Faison. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like Faison as an actor, but Professor Utonium, he is not. Utonium in the show is shown as this straight-laced, plain, very ordinary guy. Hell, even his square design is supposed to represent this.
Oh, they pick on me at work and they call me square and...
His movements are also presented as very stiff and rigid, and his voice is incredibly monotone.
You see, the bladder odia, or more commonly known as the cockroach, may be ugly and disgusting.
Donald Faison just offers way too much roundness and charisma for a character like this.
The 3Bs back in Townsville.
Oh, but this trailer does try to have an in-universe answer to this, but we'll get to that in a bit. One of the only good things in this trailer is the level of detail in these newspaper clippings. It's interesting that they have a newspaper that comes from Citiesville, which is the neighbouring town from their home place, Townsville, along with references to other villains in the show, including what appears to be the claw hand from the villain Him, which can only make you wonder what kind of nightmare fuel a live-action version of Him would actually look like. I also like the fact that they specifically state him as being actually Satan, which is what the original show actually wanted him to be, but Cartoon Network wouldn't allow it, so they just settled on referring to him as, well, him.
The only safe way to refer to this King of Darkness is simply... him.
And then we see Mojo and his son, called Jojo. Okay, so Mojo, who looks like this in the original show, is now portrayed as just some generic guy. Okay. I'm guessing this is because the show didn't have the budget to animate a CGI Mojo, so they just thought, fuck it, use a person instead. But at least put the guy in some cheap gorilla costume to make it look like you're trying. Or hell, just put a real chimp in some human clothes, film it roaming around set, smashing stuff up, fling its poo everywhere, and call it a day. Why even bother using this character if you're going to change everything about him? In fact, why even bother making a Powerpuff Girls show if you don't have the budget for this? As many of the iconic villains from the series sported all sorts of weird and iconic designs, most of which you can't simply pull off with a bit of makeup. Mojo's entire point was that he was originally the professor's lab monkey, and that the creation of the Powerpuff Girls caused his brain to mutate, which caused him to run off into isolation, and is his primary motive for not only hating the Powerpuff Girls, but also wanting to take over the world. But now he's just some random guy who doesn't have any abnormalities and seems to be pretty charismatic as he's able to hold this anti-Powerpuff Girls rally, and now even has a son called Jojo.
Are those the Powerpuff Girls? They're all so cool.
Okay, look, I don't mean to shit on child actors, but what the hell was that line delivery?
Especially Blossom.
Okay. We then see events cut to the future, where the girls are now grown up into young adults. Weirdly enough, this isn't the first time the series has toyed with this concept, but it was still pretty weird even back then.
We shouldn't talk to them. They're bad. I know.
Blossom's character is probably the closest to her original portrayal, worrying about exams and even minuscule things like daylight savings.
Wait, is it daylight savings?
I wonder if that's a reference to the daylight savings episode, but I think that's giving the show writers way too much credit.
Buttercup was constantly rebellious.
I'm not wearing that dress anymore. It's gender normative and ass ugly.
Buttercup being obsessed with gender narratives is just flat out stupid. She was probably the one out of all the girls who gave the least shit about gender identity, as she would be the least feminine of the girls, even a bit of a tomboy in places, but she also didn't outright despise everything feminine. And as for Bubbles, I don't even know where to begin.
And Bubbles was constantly drinking.
She was the sweetest and most wholesome of the three girls who was full of naivety and innocence, and now she's an alcoholic, self-centered hoe who just makes dick jokes.
An angry, kinky hate boner kind of way.
That's the best kind of boner.
Also, they gave her ice breath, where in the original show it was only Blossom who possessed that power.
I can't do it. I can't do it either.
And that's by far the worst crime here.
Not to mention that cartoon that completely whitewashed us.
Okay, I immediately retract my previous statement. This is the worst crime here. So you've not only gone and race swapped most of the cast, but now you're going that one step further and saying that it was in fact the original series that did the whitewashing. Now, at best, this is a really bad joke, but at worst, you're basically gaslighting the entire show itself. Because at the moment, most people know the cartoon came first, but if someone was unlucky enough to stumble across this show and be introduced to the Powerpuff series through this, they may actually believe this to be fact, and that the original show did evilly whitewash much of the original cast. Like, were the original showmakers okay with this? Was Craig McCracken, the series creator, okay with you writing it to make him look like some evil racist who hated diversity? This really gives off Velma vibes right here, where it's clear the writers of this series had no interest or love from the original work, and instead using that beloved franchise that was built upon other people's hard work, talent, and dedication, only to parasite from it and use it as a platform to project their own politics and viewpoints, because they know that if they had to create their own show from scratch, no one would begin watching it in the first place. This line also goes to highlight that the writers acknowledge the fact that race swapping characters from their original portrayal is bad, whilst also race swapping characters from their original portrayal. Even better is that Blossom in this show is shown to be fully Asian as a child, yet as an adult, she looks like this. Now, I know the actress who plays her, Chloe Bennett, is half Asian, but that still means you've gone from a fully Asian child to a half Asian adult. So they effectively whitewash their own show.
Nice job, retard.
He wanted to be a dad. Then why not just make 3 normal little girls?
That would have been weird.
Okay, this will be the only time I actually defend this show, but I also made that point in my What Went Wrong video about how it was a bit weird that a lone man was trying to create 3 normal little girls in a lab. But that does imply that this live action show, it would have the professor trying to create superhero girls right from the start, whereas in the original it was clearly done by accident. In which case, you're then missing out what is arguably one of the best jokes in the entire series.
Yeah, he made us in his laboratory by accident. Don't worry, Professor. I was an accident too.
Then it seems the plot would revolve around an incident where the girls accidentally kill Mojo, and so Blossom would run away in this hilarious shot where she's flying with no wind blowing her hair back. Again, stellar production value right there. Buttercup would become a firefighter? Okay, I guess. And Bubbles goes to Hollywood in order to try and sell Powerpuff Girl merch. Really? She's a woman who possesses supernatural powers, can practically do anything she wants, yet she decides she wants to be a failed sellout in Hollywood. Mojo's son then grows up and becomes the mayor of Townsville, where he now plots to get revenge on the girls.
What do you want me to do, Jojo?
Again, stellar child acting right here, but is that meant to also be Princess Morbucks? I mean, it wouldn't make sense seeing as how she's meant to be the same age as the girls, but let's be real, is this show really giving a shit about lore accuracy at this point? It looks like they were gonna also have a romance plot develop between Jojo and Blossom, which, considering she accidentally murdered his father, and he brainwashed her father in an effort to destroy them, yeah, that seems like it would be pretty messed up.
I'm really sorry for accusing your dad of mass terrorism.
Yeah. Is she flirting?
And so, yeah, that's the trailer we got. Honestly, after watching this, I have no idea who the intended audience for this show was going to be. Clearly wasn't made for fans of the original, as it just seems to want to shit all over it. And the production values are so low, and the humour is so painfully unfunny, I can't see any self-respecting adult ever wanting to tune into this. Weirdly enough, I don't entirely hate the concept of this show. I think having a darker, more adult setting could have potential, where the girls are now more grown up but are suffering from various trauma harkening back to their crime fighting days. This premise was sort of explored in the episode Speed Demon, where the girls travel to an alternate future, where because of their disappearance, the world is taken over by him, and everyone blames them for allowing it to happen, and the guilt of that starts to drive them insane. Or in the episode Citiesville, where the girls move town, and their superpowers cause so much collateral damage that the townsfolk end up hating them. There is potential for a great story out there, but unfortunately, this show wasn't it. And thankfully for us, this show is certainly one of those accidents that didn't come to be.